Humans, Professor Cleric said, his four mandibles clicking together in disdain, are the galaxy's evolutionary misstep. Fragile flesh, limited endurance, no armor, no claws, no natural toxins. A creature that should have died out before it left its first jungle. The words hung in the air like static, charged with equal parts mockery and challenge. The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy of Xenobiological Warfare was a cathedral of light and steel, tiered seats rising into the vaulted chamber, filled with cadets from over 47 species. Some clicked their jaws in amusement. Others rippled their scales in approval. And a few, mostly from the younger races, just stared with unease toward the back row, where the single humans sat. Cadet Eli Ward, Terran exchange student, 23 years old, still nursing bruises from friendly sparring sessions that were anything but. He didn't flinch at the laughter. He didn't even look up from his data pad. He just twirled a stylus between his fingers, lazy, distracted, and unbothered. Professor Cleric, however, was watching. The old Varkali's compound eyes fixed on Eli with the same look an entomologist gives a specimen that just won't die properly. "Cadet Ward," he said, his voice suddenly sharp. "Perhaps you can enlighten this class? Why is it that your kind insists on surviving when your biology suggests otherwise?" 100 alien faces turned. Chitin scraped, wings buzzed, and gills flared in anticipation. Everyone wanted to see the human squirm. Eli leaned back, arms folded behind his head. "Because, Professor," he said in an easy drawl, "we're too stubborn to die." The silence that followed was almost physical. Then laughter erupted again, deep, rolling, and cruel. The sound of a dozen different throats, making fun of the same absurdity. Cleric's mandibles twitched in irritation. "Stubbornness," he repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. "A psychological defect. Or an evolutionary feature," Eli shot back. "Depends which one of us is still standing at the end." Even some of the non-humanoid cadets hissed in appreciation at the boldness. The professor clicked a command into the hollow console, and a projection shimmered to life above the center platform, a holographic display of comparative anatomy. "Observe," he said. "Varkali, chitinous exoskeleton, redundant organ systems, pressure resistance up to 80 atmospheres. Now the Terran, soft tissue, brittle bones, chemical-based respiration. No venom glands, no spines, no natural camouflage. Even their olfactory system is primitive." The display rotated, showing a glowing wireframe of a human body, annotated with red circles highlighting biological vulnerabilities. Eli squinted at the model. "You forgot sarcasm," he said. "We're deadly with that too." More laughter, this time a mix of amusement and disbelief. "Enough!" Cleric snapped, talons striking the metal podium. "This is not humor, human. This is science. You are not strong. You are not fast. You are not superior in any measurable way." Eli shrugged. "Maybe not in your measurements." The professor's eyes narrowed. "Then tell me, Cadet, what is humanity's strength?" The human's answer came without hesitation. "We don't quit. Not when we're losing, not when it hurts, not even when we're supposed to be dead. That's our thing." Cleric's laughter was low and grinding. Sentimental nonsense. But he made a note on his datapad anyway. After class, the hall emptied in waves of chattering cadets, their voices echoing like rain on glass. Eli stayed seated, letting the crowd drain out. He'd learned the rhythm. The Varkali moved in cliques, the Sarathians preferred altitude, the aquatic races hovered near the exits where humidity levels were regulated. Humans didn't have a place, so he waited for one to appear. "Hey, Terran!" A gravelly voice came from behind him. Eli turned to find Zrun, a 6-foot reptilian cadet with scales the color of tarnished bronze. His tail swayed lazily, but his tone was sharp. "You talk big for something without armor. Armor's overrated," Eli said, shouldering his bag. "You can't outstubborn a bullet." Zrun bared his fangs in what might have been a grin. "You'll need more than stubbornness when we start field exercises." "Guess I'll find out." Zrun's tail lashed once, Playful, maybe, maybe not, and he walked off. Eli made his way down the endless hallways of the academy. The architecture was alien in every sense, built for species with different gravities, sight ranges, and limb counts. The floors subtly shifted textures depending on who walked on them. He passed a glass corridor overlooking Taraxis, the planet the Academy orbited. Below, the swirling blue-green world gleamed like a jewel, clouds coiling around its equator in slow motion. Back on Earth, his mother had called him insane for volunteering. Exchange program with aliens? Eli, they eat people. They eat students, he'd corrected. Big difference. Now, a year into the program, he wasn't so sure. That night, in the dormitory level, Eli lay in his bunk while alien voices murmured in the surrounding pods. The Varkali cadets preferred to hang upside down in their sleeping frames. The Sarathians cocooned themselves in fluid spheres. The room hummed with bioluminescent glows and the occasional mechanical chirp from environmental regulators. He flicked his datapad open. A message blinked on screen from Commander Rhea Dalton, his mentor, the only other human at the Academy, though she was stationed off-world. Ward, heard K'Tharik gave his humans a weak lecture. You keep your cool? He typed back. Define cool. I didn't punch him. Progress. You'll get your chance to prove him wrong soon enough. Midterm survival exercise. Multi-species teams. Simulated hostile environment. Eli smiled faintly. Simulated, huh? That's what they said last time. Just stay alive, kid. The next morning, the cadets gathered in the field dome, a vast enclosed biosphere designed to mimic alien terrains. Artificial suns burned above them. The air smelled of minerals and ozone. K'Tharik stood on the observation platform, robes fluttering. Welcome to your midterm, he announced. Teams of 5. You will survive 72 hours in an unregulated biosphere. Conditions will change without warning. Environmental systems will simulate heat, cold, radiation, and predation. He paused, letting that sink in. Last cycle, 32% of cadets withdrew before completion. We shall see if this class fares better. A holodisplay flickered, assigning team rosters. Eli scanned until he saw his own. Team 19, Zran, Sarathian, Lorikine, Avian, Jetix, Amorphous, and Eli Ward, human. Perfect, he muttered. Zran grinned at him from across the platform. Let's see how stubbornness holds up under real pressure. They were deployed by drop pod. The impact rattled Eli's bones, and when the hatch hissed open, a blast of humid, scorching air hit him. The ground outside was a red jungle, vines, spore trees, steaming mud. The heat felt like punishment. Zran was already scanning the perimeter, nostrils flaring. Temperature, 46 degrees. Radiation minimal. Terrain unstable. Lorikine fluttered her iridescent wings. Visibility low. We should seek higher ground. Jetix, the amorphous gelatinous being, gurgled something unintelligible and began oozing toward the shade. Eli stepped out last, squinting against the glare. His uniform was already damp with sweat. All right, first order of business, find shelter, water, and make sure we're not about to be eaten. Zran rolled his yellow eyes. We are not following a human's lead. Fine, Eli said. Then when something tries to eat you, I'll take notes. They didn't listen, of course. They argued about terrain vectors and energy reserves while Eli scouted nearby. He found a depression under a massive root cluster, shaded, dry, and defensible. Perfect camp. When he came back, Lorikine was complaining about the heat, Zran was pacing, and Jetix was half melted from dehydration. Eli sighed. Okay, kids' table's over. Follow me. By nightfall, they were huddled in the root shelter, the alien stars burning coldly above the canopy gaps. Zran grudgingly admitted. Your instincts are adequate. Eli smirked. Careful, that almost sounded like a compliment. Do not mistake observation for approval. He grinned wider. Sure thing, lizard. Lorikine tilted her head. You humans thrive in conflict. Why? Eli poked the fire pit with a stick. We don't thrive in it. We just got used to it. History made sure of that. Zrun hissed. History is irrelevant to biology. Tell that to every species that underestimated us. Eli murmured. Above them, hidden in the canopy, something massive shifted, a tremor of movement, a faint growl like metal grinding against stone. The cadets froze. Eli glanced up. Tell me that's part of the simulation. No one answered. In the observation chamber, Professor K'therick adjusted the data feeds, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. The simulation drones were transmitting irregular signals. Energy readings spiked in Quadrant 3. Strange, he muttered. No predator models were authorized for that region. A technician looked up. Should I intervene, sir? K'therick hesitated. His mandibles flexed. No. Let us observe how the human's stubbornness performs under genuine duress. He leaned closer to the monitor as movement blurred across the screen. Something big, something not in the program. Below, the human and his team were about to learn that the test had changed. The growl rolled through the jungle like thunder in a metal drum. It wasn't the low rumble of simulated predators or the synthetic cries the cadets had trained for. This sound had depth, weight, intent. Something alive was moving through the trees. Zrun's scales bristled as he drew his plasma spear. That is not in the training parameters. Eli rose slowly, eyes scanning the shadows. Guess they upgraded the simulation. Jetix, the amorphous being, shimmered with nervous light. Energy signature, unregistered. Heat spike approaching rapidly. Organic composition unknown. Translation. Eli muttered. Something's real mad. Lorrakine's feathers puffed, iridescent wings half spread in alarm. We must retreat. Too late. Zrun hissed. The trees exploded. A massive shape barreled through the foliage, 12 feet tall, plated in metallic hide that glowed faintly in the red light. Its eyes were crystalline, shifting colors like molten glass. Each step sank deep into the soil, sending tremors through the roots. The team scattered as the beast roared, a sound that punched through the air and rattled bones. Eli hit the ground hard, rolled behind a boulder, and came up with his sidearm. The creature swung its head, sensors glowing. It wasn't a biological predator. It was a drone hybrid, something mechanical fused with flesh, something not supposed to be here. Professor's little science project went rogue, Eli muttered. Human! Zrun barked from behind a fallen trunk. It's targeting heat signatures. Your temperature is the highest. Draw it away. Eli gave a half laugh. Oh, sure. Great plan. Anything else? Maybe I should invite it to dinner? But he did move, sprinting out from cover, firing 3 short bursts into the thing's plated chest. The rounds sparked harmlessly off armor. The creature's head whipped toward him, sensors flaring red. Hey, ugly! Eli shouted, ducking a swipe that tore a tree in half. Yeah, come get me! He ran. The jungle closed around him, the air thick as blood. Every step sank into steaming mud, roots clawing at his boots. The roar followed, closer each time, shaking branches free like falling spears. He dove into a crevice between 2 massive roots, gasping. Sweat dripped into his eyes. The beast stomped past, searching. Its breathing was a strange mechanical rhythm, like a broken forge bellows. Eli's heart hammered. He'd been in live fire before, insurgent skirmishes on Mars, pressure drills on Europa, but this felt different. There was no safety override, no simulation barrier. He glanced at his wrist display. The team's biosignatures flickered erratically. Lorrakeen and Zrun were still moving. Jetix had gone dark. Damn it, Eli whispered. He tapped his comm link. Team 19, regroup at my signal. Stay low, no energy weapons. The thing's tracking power sources. Static. Then Laura's voice, faint and crackling. Acknowledge, position northeast quadrant. Zrun injured. Eli exhaled through his teeth. All right, hero time. Back at the observation platform, K'therick watched the feeds with mounting unease. The hybrid creature, a Varkali war drone prototype, had been mothballed decades ago after ethical violations. It wasn't supposed to exist in the Academy system. Yet its signature was unmistakable. Deactivate it, one of the technicians urged. K'tharik's mandibles clicked. I cannot. It's isolated from the control network. The other instructors murmured nervously. One of them, a Sarathian colonel, leaned in. Your arrogance will kill those cadets, K'tharik. The professor didn't answer. His gaze was locked on one data point, the human's signal, still moving, still alive. Eli found Zrun slumped against a fallen trunk, scales scorched, one arm bleeding green plasma. You okay, big guy? Zrun's jaw flexed. Minor wound. Not fatal. Eli crouched beside him, ripping a piece of fabric from his own uniform to bind the wound. You need a med patch? Zrun shook his head. No. Conserve your resources. You may need them for yourself. Appreciate the optimism. He heard rustling above, Lorrakeen gliding down through the canopy, wings catching the dim light. Her feathers were scorched at the edges. It circles the perimeter, she said breathlessly. Intelligent patterning, it's hunting. Yeah, I noticed. Eli tightened the bandage. We need a plan that doesn't end with us being paced. Zrun's eyes narrowed. Your species favors improvisation. Now would be the time. Eli smirked. Funny, that's usually what we call panic with good PR. He opened his field pack, rifling through gear, rations, rope, a cracked thermal knife, and one broken energy cell. Not much. Then an idea started to form, dangerous, reckless, human. All right, he said. We can't kill it head on. But we might not have to. It's got heat and movement sensors. Let's give it something to chew on. Laura tilted her head. Bait? Yeah. Fake bait. He started tying the thermal knife's heating coil to the broken energy cell with stripped wire. This'll make a nice hot signature. If we can lure it near that swamp pit we passed, with the gas bubbles, we light it up. Zrun rumbled doubtfully. You intend to detonate methane? Eli grinned. Exactly. Laura made a shrill noise. That could incinerate us as well. Welcome to humanity's design philosophy, he said. If it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. The beast's footsteps thundered closer, each one sending vibrations through the ground. Eli's makeshift bomb pulsed faintly with heat, wedged between two roots. Positions, he whispered. Laura took to the air, darting through the canopy as a distraction. Zrun crouched behind cover, ready to spring. Eli waited, heart pounding in rhythm with the monster's steps. It burst through the brush, mechanical plates glinting, limbs dripping with sap and blood. Its sensors locked onto the decoy immediately. Come on, Eli whispered. The creature lunged, claws sinking into the root cluster where the device was hidden. Eli triggered the detonator on his wrist. Nothing happened. Oh, come on, he muttered, slamming the button again. A spark. Then a deafening whump. The swamp exploded. Flames tore through the clearing, a geyser of burning gas rising into the sky. The shockwave threw Eli and Zrun backward. Laura screamed overhead as heat rippled through her wings. The creature shrieked, part mechanical, part animal, as fire consumed its plating. It staggered, thrashing wildly. Eli groaned, spitting dirt. Yeah, that'll do it. But then, impossibly, the beast still moved. Half its body burned away, it turned, one glowing eye still functional. It saw Eli. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, he breathed. The monster lunged. Back in the control chamber, alarms screamed. Containment breach in Sector 19! K'tharik's claws dug into the console. Impossible! It should be destroyed! But the feed showed the hybrid still active, damaged yet relentless. The Sarathian colonel rounded on him. Shut it down before they die! K'tharik's voice was tight. The control uplink is offline. If the creature destroys its own core, the explosion will level half the dome. Then you'd better hope your weak human finds a way. Eli hit the mud, the creature's claws missing him by inches. He rolled, grabbed a jagged piece of metal debris, and jammed it into the exposed gears of its leg. Sparks flew. It howled. Srun, limping, leapt onto its back, driving his plasma spear into the exposed circuits. The weapon melted halfway through before snapping. "Now what?" Srun roared. "Keep it busy!" Eli shouted, running toward the wreckage of his pack. He found the broken energy cell, leaking volatile plasma. He gritted his teeth, ripped out the stabilizer chip, and wired it to his comm unit. The comm crackled with static. Commander Dalton's voice flickered through, faint but audible. "Eli? You're off the grid. What's happening?" "Long story short," Eli said, panting. "I'm about to blow up a robot dinosaur." "Repeat?" He didn't. He sprinted back toward the fight. Srun was being thrown off, slammed into a tree. Laura dove, claws slashing at the creature's sensors. Eli slid under its massive frame, grabbed hold of exposed tubing, and shoved the glowing energy cell deep into the cavity where the power core pulsed. "Eat plasma, you overgrown toaster," he growled, slamming his wrist detonator. This time it worked. The explosion was smaller but brutal. The creature convulsed, then collapsed into the swamp, smoke rising from its shattered body. For a long moment, everything was silent except the crackle of burning vegetation. Then Laura spoke softly. Is it dead?" Eli coughed. "If it's not, it deserves to win." He slumped against a tree, chest heaving. His hands shook, part exhaustion, part adrenaline. Srun limped over, one eye ridge twitching. "You risked all our lives." Eli gave a crooked grin. "Yeah. Worked though, didn't it?" Srun hesitated, then gave a rumbling chuckle. "You are insane." "Thank you. I try." Hours later, rescue drones finally arrived, scanning the area. The cadets were lifted out of the wrecked biosphere, soot-streaked and battered. From the observation deck, K'rul watched as the medics checked vitals. The human, bruised, limping, bleeding from a dozen cuts, was still standing. Still smirking. One of the instructors turned to K'rul. "Your experiment nearly killed them." The professor's mandibles clicked slowly. "And yet the human lives." He stared at Eli's image on the monitor, watching as the cadet laughed at something Srun said, teeth flashing under the emergency lights. K'rul whispered to himself. "Too stubborn to die." Later, in the medical ward, Eli sat on the examination table, while the med drone patched a burn on his shoulder. Srun was across the room, sulking while a nurse applied sealant to his scales. Commander Dalton appeared on the comm display, her expression tight. "You disobeyed at least 12 safety protocols." Eli shrugged. "Yeah, but I passed the test." "Eli, the test was not supposed to involve a rogue death machine." "Then call it extra credit." Dalton stared at him for a long moment, then, against her will, she smiled. "You're lucky I like your kind of stupid." He grinned. "It's not stupid. It's stubborn." In his private chamber, Professor K'rul reviewed the battle footage again and again. The human charging into fire, ignoring pain, improvising weapons from debris. For the first time, a strange feeling prickled under his carapace. Admiration. Or perhaps unease. He opened a research log. Observation: humans demonstrate adaptive persistence beyond rational parameters. Hypothesis: survival driven not by instinct, but defiance. Conclusion: further study required. He closed the log. Outside, the Academy's banners fluttered in the artificial wind. And deep in the infirmary, Eli Ward slept with a faint smile, unaware that the next test would be designed specifically for him. The next morning, the Academy was silent. Not the usual kind of quiet that came after a training cycle. This was heavier, measured, like the entire complex was holding its breath. Eli Ward woke to find his datapad flashing with official summons. Instructor inquiry, Professor K'rul. Disciplinary review. Attendance mandatory. "Of course," he muttered, rubbing his bruised shoulder. "Save a school from a killer robot, get detention." He dressed in the standard cadet blacks, straightened the collar, or as much as the torn fabric allowed, and limped toward the central faculty chamber. His reflection in the steel corridor walls was a portrait of defiance, a human, underslept, underhealed, and still smirking like the galaxy hadn't managed to kill him yet. When he entered, Cleric was waiting, tall, iridescent carapace gleaming under the lights, his mandibles tight with unreadable emotion. 3 other senior instructors stood beside him, expressionless. "Cadet Ward," Cleric began, his voice clipped. "You violated containment procedures, destroyed Academy property, and risked the lives of your team." Eli crossed his arms. "And saved them. An accidental outcome," the professor snapped. "Call it what you want, but they're still breathing." One of the Cerathian officers leaned forward, eyes like molten gold. "Do you deny detonating an unauthorized energy core?" "I denied dying when I was supposed to," Eli said flatly. The silence that followed was thick enough to taste. Cleric's eyes glittered. "You believe your recklessness is strength. You mistake chaos for courage." Eli met his gaze. "You mistake fear for intelligence." The Varkali's claws scraped the podium. "Humans survive through chance, not design." "And yet," Eli said, taking a step forward, "we're the only species in this room that made it to space before we had peace." That earned a murmur from the panel, scandalized, impressed, both. Cleric's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You think stubbornness makes you superior?" "No," Eli said. "It just makes us hard to get rid of." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Cleric inclined his head slightly. "Very well, Cadet Ward. You wish to prove humanity's endurance? Then you shall have your chance." Eli frowned. "That sounds ominous." "It is your final evaluation," the professor said. "A simulation designed to test physical and psychological resilience. 48 hours. No external support, no technology. Pure survival." Eli smirked faintly. "You sure that's fair? You're putting me at a disadvantage." Cleric's mandibles twitched, maybe irritation, maybe amusement. "Report to Dome 12 at dawn. You will demonstrate, once and for all, the merit of your species' stubbornness." Eli gave a mock salute. "Can't wait." Dome 12 was different from the others. Larger. Older. A relic from when the Academy had been a military proving ground. Its outer shell was scarred, blackened by impact marks. Inside, the environment was a nightmare mosaic. Desert plains melting into volcanic ridges, ash storms sweeping across glass-like dunes. When the heavy gates closed behind him, Eli was alone. His comm link blinked red, disabled. His equipment, a basic field kit, water ration, survival blade, and a thermal suit barely holding together. A voice echoed through the loudspeakers, distorted but unmistakably Cleric's. "Cadet Ward. Your objective is simple. Survive." Eli looked around. "You really need better hobbies, Professor." The voice continued, clinical and cold. "Environmental conditions will shift unpredictably. Sensors will monitor biological strain. Withdrawal is permitted. Failure is not fatal, unless you allow it to be." "That's comforting," Eli muttered. Then the sky changed. The artificial sun flickered, dimmed, and turned blood red. The temperature plummeted in seconds. Frost crept across the ground. Eli pulled his collar tighter, exhaling clouds of mist. So much for a warm-up. He started walking, east by the compass in his wristband, though directions meant little in this manufactured hellscape. His boots crunched over frozen sand. Hours passed. The cold seeped into his bones. His water ration froze solid. Every breath felt like inhaling glass. He found shelter in the shadow of a ridge, huddled near a cluster of dark stones radiating faint heat. His hands shook. His lips cracked. He whispered to himself, half delirious, "Don't stop, Ward. You've been colder. Antarctica drills. Mars nights. Keep moving." The sky above flashed again, sudden, blinding white. The temperature spiked. Snow turned to steam. He laughed bitterly. "Make up your mind, simulation." Then came the wind, carrying ash, grit, and something else. The smell of burning metal. He turned. A silhouette moved across the ridge, tall, thin, inhuman. "Hey!" Eli shouted. No response. He squinted. The figure shimmered, then split into 3. Drones. Small ones this time, black spheres hovering silently, their lenses glowing blue. He raised a hand. "K'theric, if that's you watching, you're missing the popcorn." The drones descended. Their lights turned red. Eli groaned. "Of course." They fired. He dove behind the stones as energy bolts tore through the ground, searing the sand into glass. The heat washed over him like a furnace. He rolled, came up with his blade, a worthless thing against drones, and hurled a rock instead. It smashed into one of them, knocking it sideways. "Science lesson, kids!" he shouted. "Mass still matters!" Another bolt grazed his shoulder, spinning him into the dirt. Pain seared, but he grit his teeth. He'd been hit before. Pain meant he was still alive. He grabbed a chunk of melted glass, jammed it into the cooling vent of the nearest drone as it swooped in. The machine spasmed, shorted, and fell smoking. The others backed off, recalibrating. Eli crouched low, panting, eyes wild. "Come on, you metal gnats! Let's dance!" The next drone dove, he sidestepped, slashed upward, and managed to wedge the survival blade through its lens. Sparks burst. The third one fired again, hitting his leg. He dropped to one knee, grunting. Then he remembered the broken coolant canister on the fallen drone. He crawled toward it, ripped out the line, and jammed the valve open as the last drone closed in. Freezing mist exploded outward, liquid nitrogen hissing across the air. The drone's sensors fogged, froze, then shattered as it hit the ground. Eli lay there for a moment, breathing hard. "Still here," he muttered to no one. "Still stubborn." Up in the control center, K'theric watched the feed. With fascination. The human's vitals were spiking, oxygen levels dropping, body temperature unstable. Yet the neural readings showed no panic. Only focus. "He should be unconscious," murmured one assistant. K'theric said nothing. Another voice, the Sarathian colonel, spoke coldly. "End this. You've proven your point." The professor's mandibles twitched. "Have I?" He tapped a command. On the display, the environmental readings shifted. The dome began to quake. "Let us see," he whispered. "The threshold of human endurance." The ground split open. Eli barely had time to grab a ledge before the floor gave way beneath him, plunging into molten rock far below. He dangled, fingers burning, then hauled himself up inch by inch. His nails tore. His palms bled. But he didn't let go. He dragged himself over the edge and collapsed, shaking. The air was sulfur thick, the heat unbearable. A voice echoed faintly from hidden speakers. "You may withdraw at any time, cadet." Eli coughed, spat blood, and laughed. "Withdraw? Sorry, Professor. Didn't pack that word." He staggered upright, one leg limping, one arm useless. "Is that all you got?" he shouted to the empty sky. "Weather robots, cliffs, come on. You said survive, right? I'm not done yet." The sky flashed again, and this time, from the molten plain ahead, a mechanical colossus rose. A training titan, obsolete, rusted, but massive. It stood like a steel mountain, eyes burning white. Eli stared. "Well, guess class ain't over." The titan moved, slow, deliberate, each step shaking the dome. Eli limped toward it, half laughing, half snarling. "You think we quit because it hurts?" He climbed onto a fractured ridge, breathing raggedly. The creature loomed closer, mechanical roar echoing. He spotted something, vents along its knee joints, glowing faintly. Weak points. Maybe. "Always the knees," he muttered. He tore off the damaged oxygen tube from his suit, flicked the valve open, pressurized air whistling out. Then he ripped the ignition plate from his comm link and pressed it against the metal. A spark. A hiss. A tiny makeshift rocket. "Come on, you beautiful mess," he growled. He jammed the tube into the vent and hit the ignition. The explosion rocked the Titan's leg. It stumbled, metal shrieking as it fell to one knee. Eli screamed wordlessly, diving clear as debris rained down. His suit tore. His skin blistered. And when the dust cleared, he was still standing. Barely. But standing. Hours later, the dome doors finally opened. Medical drones swarmed in, scanning the devastation. Professor K'theric entered last, striding through smoke and rubble. He stopped when he saw Eli, slumped against the fallen Titan, eyes half open, lips split but smiling. "You still live," the professor said softly. Eli coughed weakly. "Disappointed?" K'theric's mandibles moved slowly. "Impressed." He crouched beside the human. "Why did you not stop?" The test was unwinnable. Eli met his gaze, eyes bloodshot but burning. "Because, Professor, you wanted to know what makes us strong." He tapped his chest. "It's this. We don't stop when it's smart. We stop when it's over." For a long moment neither moved. Then, unexpectedly, K'theric extended one clawed hand, not in command, but in respect. Eli stared at it, then grinned. "You sure you're not gonna crush me?" "I am certain," the professor said quietly. Eli took the hand. The alien's grip was cold, but steady. "Congratulations, Cadet Ward," K'theric said. "You have demonstrated that humanity's weakness may yet be its greatest weapon." Eli smiled, voice hoarse. "Told you. Too stubborn to die." The professor's mandibles clicked once, not in mockery this time, but laughter. That night, the academy halls were alive with whispers. The human had survived Dome 12. Alone. Injured. Unarmed. Even the Varkali veterans, proud warriors who respected endurance above all, watched him with a new kind of reverence. Zrun found him in the infirmary, propped up on a medical bed. "You look half dead." Eli smirked. "Only half?" Lorikeen fluttered nearby, eyes bright. "They say the professor will never mock your species again." Eli chuckled weakly. "Oh, he will. It's his thing. But maybe he'll think twice first." Zrun crossed his arms. "You may be insane, human. But I would follow you into any war." Eli looked at him, then smiled tiredly. "Good to know. Just remind me to bring sunscreen next time." They laughed, rough, weary, real. Outside, the alien stars burned cold and distant, but somewhere among them, the universe had learned a new rule that day. Humans weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest. They weren't even the smartest. But they were the last to fall. And the first to get back up. The lights of the Nexus dome flickered as the last of the storm faded. Outside, the alien jungle still glowed faintly from residual lightning discharges, illuminating the battered outpost and the shattered towers of the observation spire. Inside, silence reigned, broken only by the soft hum of life support systems struggling to stabilize. Elara sat against the scorched bulkhead, her uniform torn, her hands blackened with dust and blood. Around her, the surviving cadets, what few remained, watched her with a mix of exhaustion, awe, and something approaching reverence. The alien professor, Ka'rul Vesh, still stood where he had been moments ago, his many-eyed face unreadable, his tendrils twitching in confusion. The once arrogant academic of the Galactic University had seen every form of intelligence the galaxy could offer. Yet never, never, had he seen this. The human had refused to die. The spire had fallen. The power grid had collapsed. The shielding systems had failed. Yet somehow, the fragile, oxygen-breathing, water-dependent creature had stood at the center of the storm, directing rescues, patching systems with duct tape and stubborn will, shouting at death itself to take a number and wait its turn. And it had worked. "Your species should not have survived this," Ka'rul said finally, his voice soft, heavy with something like disbelief. "By every metric, by every biological law, this should have been extinction." Elara looked up, wiping grime from her face with a shaking hand. "Yeah," she rasped, voice barely audible. "We get that a lot." Around her, the cadets chuckled weakly, their laughter half hysteria, half triumph. Even the wounded smiled. Ka'rul approached slowly, each step deliberate, his mind a whirlwind of recalculations. "You are injured," he observed. "You should rest. Medical drones will." "Later," Elara interrupted, forcing herself to stand. She stumbled once, caught herself against a wall, and glanced toward the shattered viewport. Outside, the horizon still burned with blue lightning. "We've still got to signal the evac ships." Ka'rul tilted his head. "The beacons are destroyed. Then we build new ones." The alien paused, watching her limp toward the calm array. "You do not give up." Elara's laugh was raw and tired. "We don't know how." Ka'rul's eyes widened slightly. For a long moment, the alien said nothing. Then, in a tone both reverent and weary, he murmured, "You truly are a contradiction." By the next cycle, the survivors had turned the ruined observation spire into a makeshift communications hub. The power conduits were rerouted through melted corridors. Cooling pipes from the reactor were used as signal amplifiers. Pieces of debris became antennae. It was chaotic. It was reckless. It was impossible. And it worked. Every few minutes, Ka'rul would glance at Elara, half expecting her to collapse, half afraid she never would. She moved through the wreckage like a machine powered by sheer spite. Her eyes were bloodshot, her knuckles raw, but every time a cadet faltered, she was there, lifting them up, cracking a joke, forcing a smile. "Professor," she said at one point, while rewiring a relay with the precision of desperation, "you once said humans evolved from prey species, right?" Ka'rul nodded. "Your records indicate as much." "Then maybe that's the point," Elara said. "We got so used to being hunted that we learned to run, hide, fight, build, whatever it takes. Survival isn't in our strength. It's in refusing to accept that we're done." Ka'rul considered that, his tentacles curling slowly in thought. "Stubbornness," he murmured. "The universe's least efficient survival trait." "Maybe," Elara said with a faint smile. "But it's kept us alive this long." By the time the rescue ships arrived, the storm had cleared. The cadets stood on the cracked landing pad, their uniforms shredded, their faces hollowed by exhaustion but alight with pride. The rescue crew, composed of armored medics from half a dozen species, hesitated at the sight. They had expected casualties. Instead, they found survivors. Ka'rul stood beside Elara as the first transport touched down. "You realize," he said quietly, "that your actions here will be studied for generations. This event will reshape how the Council evaluates humanity." Elara smirked. "You mean they'll stop calling us fragile?" "Perhaps not. But they may finally understand that fragility is not weakness." A voice cut through the comms. "Professor Ka'rul, we're reading your biosigns. Are you uninjured?" "I am changed," Ka'rul replied, his gaze fixed on the human beside him. "But not uninjured." Elara blinked at him, unsure whether that was humor or something deeper. Hours later, as medics worked and ships lifted off, Ka'rul recorded his report for the Galactic Academy archives. His voice was calm, formal, at first. "Incident report, Nexus outpost collapse. Total structural loss. 91% environmental damage. Survival rate, 78%, primarily due to the actions of Cadet Elara Hayes of Earth." He paused. His eyes lingered on the human asleep beside the medbay window, her hand loosely gripping a shattered data tablet like a relic. "She demonstrated atypical behavior patterns for an oxygen-dependent organism under extreme duress," he continued softly. "Repeated disregard for pain, exhaustion, or rational limitations. Behavior consistent with human stubbornness." He hesitated again, then added, "It would seem that in their defiance of death, they have discovered a strange kind of immortality, not of body, but of will." When Elara woke, the ship was already in transit. The stars beyond the viewport streaked in long ribbons of blue and gold. Ka'rul sat nearby, still reviewing data, though most of his screens displayed nothing but static. "You're supposed to be sleeping," she murmured. "So are you," he replied without looking up. I'll rest when we're home. Ka'rul chuckled quietly. You said that 4 hours ago. Elara grinned faintly. And 4 centuries before that, if I remember our species right. He studied her for a long time. You humans, your history is written in near-extinction events. Ice ages, plagues, wars, famine, and yet every time you persisted. Yeah, she said softly. We don't do extinction well. When the transport reached the Galactic Academy, word had already spread. Students from across the known worlds gathered in the atrium to see them disembark. Ka'rul led the procession, followed by the surviving cadets. Elara was last, limping slightly, the Medal of Survival already hanging around her neck, an award she had not asked for and didn't particularly want. As they crossed the hall, a young alien student, barely a first year, whispered loudly. That's the human? The one who kept fighting after the storm hit? Elara flashed a grin. Depends who's asking. The student hesitated. What's your secret? How do humans survive things that should kill them? Elara looked at Ka'rul, then at the sea of faces. Her smile faded into something more solemn, more honest. We don't survive because we're strong, she said. We survive because we can't stand losing. Laughter rippled through the hall, but there was respect there too, a deeper recognition that went beyond humor. Ka'rul stepped forward, addressing the assembly. Let this serve as a lesson, he said, his voice resonating through the chamber. Strength is not the absence of weakness. It is the refusal to surrender to it. That night, the professor stood alone in his office, recording one last entry. I once mocked humanity, he said softly. I called them fragile, impulsive, short-lived. I believed their survival in the galaxy would be brief. He glanced toward the courtyard below, where the cadets of 100 species trained under the stars, and among them, one human practiced hand-to-hand drills, sweat glistening, eyes blazing with quiet determination. I see now that their fragility is not a flaw, he continued. It is their edge. For what is stubbornness but hope, weaponized? He closed the recording. End of report. Days later, the Academy archives would tag the entry with a new classification. Case study, human perseverance phenomenon. And beneath it, in small text, someone, perhaps a cadet, perhaps Ka'rul himself, had added a note. Weakness can be measured. Stubbornness cannot. Weeks later, a new class entered Ka'rul's lecture hall. The alien professor stood at the front, his tone calm and clipped as always, but his gaze sharper, wiser. Today's lesson, he began, concerns the limits of endurance in oxygen-based life forms. Specifically, humans. The students chuckled. Ka'rul smiled faintly. Now, before you ask, no, they are not indestructible. They are simply too irrational to stop trying. A murmur of amusement spread through the hall. And that, Ka'rul said, turning to the display screen where the storm-scarred image of Elara Hayes appeared, is why they are to be feared, studied, and perhaps admired. He paused for a heartbeat, then added quietly. They're too stubborn to die.